In this unit, we're going to be looking at graphs. We're going to start with periodic functions. And that just means it's a function that repeats at regular intervals. Now, the period is the length of one cycle. In other words, how long it takes for it to get back and start over again. Now, the amplitude is kind of, we would think about it, if we're thinking about these like waves, it'd be the height of a wave. Height of a wave. The other way to think about it is it'd be half of the distance between the minimum and maximum. So let's look at this graph. Does this graph repeat itself? It does. So this would be periodic. The domain. Well, if it's periodic, then it keeps going and going and going and going. So this would be all real numbers. Or you could say negative infinity to infinity. Now the ranges are y values. So I want to look at the smallest y value to the largest y value. And so this one's going between -3 and 3. You could also write this in interval notation. So I can get my idea of my minimum and maximum once I know my range. Now the period is how long it takes to repeat one full cycle. So I notice that I'm at my lowest point here, then it goes up, and then it comes back. So this is kind of one full cycle. So that is going 1, 2, 3, 4. The amplitude is half the distance between the min and the max, or you can think of it as the height of one wave. It would be 3. Now we're not seeing the whole thing, but does this look like it might be repeating itself? Yes. Now since I don't see everything, I'm going to assume this is all real numbers. And the range is going from -2 to 2. The period starts here, goes there, then back up, and then back here. So that would be 6. The amplitude would be 2. Is this one periodic? No, because it's getting bigger. No, not the same pattern. So it'd be really hard to fill in everything else. I could fill in the domain, but if it's just going to keep getting bigger, I don't know what the range is going to be. All right, is this one repeating itself? Yes. The domain, I'm noticing that it's almost everything, but we got these little dashed lines. Those look like asymptotes. So it's all real numbers except for -4, -1, 2, 5, ... Which would it be like -4 plus, how far apart are they? 3? 3 in. The range. Uh-oh. I don't know where it stops and I don't know where it ends there, so that's -infinity to infinity. The period. How far is it before it repeats itself? Well, I'm going to look at one full cycle, and that was 3 steps. Now the amplitude here, since I don't have a min and a max, there's not really an amplitude on this one. Okay. Next one. Is this a periodic function? Yes. The domain. Uh-oh, it's got these open circles. So it's everything except for those open circles. And I've got one at -3, 1, 5, ... Or I could write -3 plus 4n because they're separated by 4 each time. The range is going between -2 and 4. We're including -2 because that is a point, and 4 is not included. The period, how long does it take to make one full cycle? Well, from here to there, so 4 steps. The amplitude, see, be careful. We would have thought this was the height of the wave, but this one's kind of shifted a little bit. So it's not centered along the x-axis. So I'm going to find the difference between my minimum and maximum. So 4 minus the -2, that's 6 steps. So my amplitude is 3. Now, this table is showing values of one cycle of a periodic function. The graph of f of x consists of straight line segments that connect consecutive points in the table. So, based on the values in the table, explain how you know that this is one cycle of a continuous periodic function. Well, it starts at 4 and comes back to 4. So it starts and ends at the same spot. It starts and ends at the same spot. Same y value. So what would be the period? Well, if this is one full cycle and it starts when x is -4 and goes to 3, the period would be 7 steps. The amplitude would be half of the max minus the min. So the maximum y value was 4, and the smallest was -2. So it's 3. Now they asked me to sketch the graph between -11 and 10. Well, we don't have all of that in the table, so let's just fill in what we know from the table. -4 goes to 4. When x is 0, we go to 2. When x is 1, I'm at -2. When x is 3, I'm back at 4. And it said these were straight lines. And they tell us that it repeats itself. So then the next one would be 4 steps later. So we'd have one like this. We'd go over 1, down 4. And then 2 steps, and back up. Now let's see if I can go backwards. Okay, so 2 steps, and then down to -2. 1 step, 2. 4 steps, back up to 4, sorry. Now, what would be the value of f of 15? So, let's think about that. F of 15. That would be, so how far are we? Our period is 7. So, 7 steps away, I'd be at the same spot. So look at, when we're at 1, I'm at -2. 7 steps later, I'm at 8. 7 steps later, I'd be at f of 15. Ooh, -77. Well, if my period is 7, let's see, then that's a multiple of 7. That would be 11 cycles backwards, but I would end up at the same spot that I started at on when x is 0. Because 0 minus 7 minus 7 minus 7 minus 7 minus 7 minus 7 would get me to -77. So f of -77 is going to be 2. Because that would be 0 minus 7 times 11. This one would be the x value of 8 plus 7. So if I add 7 or subtract 7, I'll end up in the same spot. So this is going to be the same as f of 8, and this one's going to be the same as f of 0. What would be f of 64? Ooh, okay, so 64. Let me see. 64. 64 is not divisible by 7. Let's see, what is? Well, I know that 9 times 7 is 63. So that's a multiple of 7. So if I start with 1 and add 63, then I'm going to be at 64. So the x value, 1, is going to have the same y value as 64 does. So when x is 1, I'm at negative 2. Negative 25. Okay, so negative 25 is not a multiple of 7, but negative 21 is. So negative 3 times 7 gives me negative 21. So if I took negative 4 and added negative 21, I'd be at negative 25. So if I took negative 4 and added negative 21, I would be at negative 25. So if I find the y value that goes with negative 4, I would find the y value for negative 25. It would be the same because it repeats itself every 7 steps. Now in this unit, I do not have a mastery check. I want you to do the practice problems after this. And it is on a separate page, so you should be able to just rip out the 4.1 practice.